G'day guys, Tours20 here and welcome back to Parkitect. So in the last episode I began work on the theme park in Scenario Editor, basically just figuring out the general layout and where things are going to be going, putting down the entrance and the loading dock and all that sort of stuff. So now that that's all done in Scenario Editor, now I can actually play the game, and I think I might spend a bit of time just showing you around before I actually start building anything. I'm going to put it on pause because we are actually playing with money, and like every minute counts. I'm going to start losing money, like I know it. First thing to note, unnamed. I'm recording this episode before releasing that episode, the first one, so hit me up with some names. I definitely need one. We have some objectives that I would really like to achieve within like 10 episodes at least. We need to have at least 600 guests in the park. That's not that easy. And I also need to have an operating profit of at least 1,500. So there are a couple of goals that I need. I'm still learning all these things. I don't really know. They're just general graphs and all that sort of stuff. Here's the park, and this is basically the entrance. I was going for super generic look. I didn't really want anything that was super elaborate. I built this in a previous park and then I just imported it in using the blueprints down here. So if you saw me just place that down, that's why. We also have an information booth that's outside the park and a bathroom too, just to give people a bit of access around there. But generally, I just wanted to keep it somewhat plain because we will be going into more detail as we start doing the park. This turn and circle is mostly for buses and for like Ubers and taxis and stuff. General parking is around here, and you know, I sort of imagine this is the end, or like the closest parking to the park. The rest of it sort of extends yonder. And the park's situated in a forest, so you know, all this area is all forested, but I'd imagine there'd be like some sort of city or town pretty close by. So here's the parking lot. I wanted to keep it really basic. It's not even concrete. I think it's what I had imagined to be gravel, and I just built some lights as well just to light it up a bit. Some cool things that I did was retextured some areas of the paths so that it looks a little bit more worn out. If you watch my city skyline stuff, you know I like doing things like that. A lot of cool little tricks that I'll be doing throughout this episode too. And didn't want to go too, I mean, I could have placed cars throughout this entire thing, but I'm pretty sure there's limits in the game and I don't want to start maximizing my, well, basically losing frames straight up. So we'll see what happens. I'd imagine that this car park used to extend a little bit further, but as the park has grown over time, so has the cargo yard. So this is getting a little bit bigger, and we're actually going to extend it around here at some stage. Not anytime soon, but eventually around there. And what I've got in the middle of this is like the main warehouse, and these two blocks are kind of a bit more office blocks slash warehouses. So the main floor is in here where you probably store most of the stuff that's going into the theme park, and just like some general dumping sort of places. These are shipping containers, by the way. They're pretty basic, but you know, that's the sort of generalness I'm going for this game, is, you know, basic detail, but also trying to keep it pretty effective too. But I love the way this thing turned out. Of course, there's like fireworks sitting on crates and things like that, and treasure chests. Look, I mean, considering this game has only really been released for like 2 months, I think the assets that already exist within this game are really, really cool. They give you some cool building blocks to work with, and you know, I'll be probably extending and downloading some more mods and assets, which I'm going to talk about pretty shortly as well. What we have here, this is where the loading dock is, so the actual loading dock. In here, this is where garbage will be dumped, which is right next to this garbage dump here. And then we also have 2 loading docks, which is where all the cargo is going to be coming in. So it's sort of like what I wanted it to look. I wanted it to look as if it was close to the main entrance, but sort of far away, because that's generally where they are positioned. And you know, I'd imagine that when this park was first built, it was probably only about this size, so kind of small, and then we're going to extend further as the park has, you know, extended over time, if you know, if you can imagine it to look like that. And in terms of mods, I've got one mod running at the moment, and that's, I think, scenery collision or something like that, where I can pretty much collide different sceneries together. I'll download more mods later, I guess. At the moment, I'm just going to try and play practically vanilla. Silverite made a really great point about keeping the game pretty vanilla because it is really beautiful the way it is, and you can change the perspective with mods, make it more 3D, but honestly, this is what I downloaded the game for. I wanted it to be isometric, so that's pretty much I'm going to keep it. But I will probably grab a couple of mods as they come out, and let me know if you've got some in mind. I do think the coaster cam does look pretty cool, so I might consider that one too. For this episode, I'm going to be working on the Mainstreet, which should probably just extend about this far. We'll see how we go for this episode. It's already getting lengthy. Eventually, I will be placing some sort of roller coaster here. I'll talk about in the time lapse, but we're not going to do that today. But I think that's pretty much it for this bit. I'm going to get into the time lapse and start building, and I'll start talking about some stuff then. So, like I said before, we're going to stick with some very generic theming for the Mainstreet. Now, I'm doing that for a couple of reasons, mainly because I just want to get the feel of the mechanics and stick with some very basic looking buildings before sort of diving into anything a little bit more complex. So these sort of main streets are generally quite generic, and they are very basic sort of buildings. So the sort of buildings that I'm sort of going for are the ones that you sort of find on the main street of many theme parks around the US. I'm actually looking at a lot of images from Cedar Point and figuring out like the general layout for those sort of buildings and how the buildings are sort of structured, and also how the layout of the main street looks too. Now, Cedar Point is much larger theme park than what this one will end up looking like. I think I'll probably be taking a lot more inspiration from Cedar Point when I build probably the next series or the next park, when I sort of go for a bigger scale kind of a thing. But what I really like about Cedar Point is that there's quite a bit of history in there. I mean, it dates back to like the 60s, I think, and the very entrance of that park, I know the entrance has had a major makeover, but generally that park as you walk in is pretty much how it was, the same layout basically as it was back in the 60s, and the park has just extended over time, and that's sort of the idea behind this series, at least, is to sort of have a very dense and very sort of old-fashioned-esque main entrance, and then when the park sort of extends a little bit further on, we sort of branch out into more of a park landscape, and you can sort of see where they've done expansions. So, you know, we might even have a car park that might have a roller coaster over the top of it. I've seen things like this at Magic Mountain. So Magic Mountain is something that I will be taking some ideas from, because I've been there and have a bit of experience walking around those streets, and also it's quite a cool looking park. I wouldn't mind taking some ideas from there too. And before I get carried away with everything I'm doing, I just have to quickly address something. So I've actually already recorded the next episode because I've just been pretty motivated to play this game, and I open up the park and I start getting goods delivered and all that sort of stuff, and seeing how it functions. And something that I totally didn't realize is that I hadn't connected up my paths to the cargo and the delivery section properly, and I actually haven't been getting any goods. So the way that you see me connected up to the paths, and even in the live play at the end of this episode, it's not functional. So just ignore that. I'm going to leave that footage there anyway because it's already recorded and all that, but it's not efficient and it's not working properly. And I can't remember if I address it in the live play, you know, whether or not I definitely don't get any goods delivered, and my haulers don't function properly. So ignore all that. That gets fixed in the next episode, and everything's all working fine from now on. Yeah, like I said, I'm still a bit of a noob and still trying to figure out how everything works, and I'm, you know, probably not the best person to be watching play this game at this very stage, but, you know, you can learn as I learn, I guess, unless you're already much better at this game than I am. And something that I do struggle with, and I've always struggled with, and I always struggle with this as well when I do just art in general, when I draw pictures and start painting, is I always can never figure out what colors to use. And this is a prime example as I build this main building here. always struggle with which ones to use. So Silverrat actually made a really cool point, which is something that I try to do, but I never really can choose the right colors. And Silverrat always talks about how, well, he has spoken about how he tries to only use about 3 colors, and those colors will relate to the roof, to the detail work, and then the walls. And I've been trying to sort of stick with that too, and it helps out a lot, but I still just struggle when it comes to choosing the right colors. And I find that a lot of the colors that I'm using, I don't know whether it's just the game, but I find that a lot of the colors that I'm using are kind of a bit, got a bit of an old-fashioned sort of look to it. And maybe it's because of the pastel look, and the walls that I've chosen are a little bit 60s styled, and you know, that's not a bad thing because we are sort of going for an old-fashioned Main Street here. But that building that you see on the corner, not the red one, the other one, it's got a bit of a baby blue feel to it, doesn't it? It's sort of looks like the sort of colors you'd imagine in a child's bedroom or something. So I might have to change that. I think I do change that. A lot of the colors don't stick. I do sort of fix them up and change them up and figure out exactly how that's going to look. So yeah, don't judge too much about the colors. I do need to improve them. And what I'm doing right now is I'm now going to work on this carousel, and this carousel is a ride that I think would have been built in the park from day dot, and it's had major updates as the park has progressed over time, but it's a bit of a historical landmark, really. It's sort of a ride that just sits there, no one really goes on it, but they can't tear it down because it's just got too much heritage and too much history on it. And so I wanted to go with that idea and try to create it so that it does have a real old feel to it, but also maybe like a new paint job and a little bit of maybe a couple of modifications to it, but they're trying to keep it look somewhat how it has when it was first built. There's one that sits in Cedar Point on the main street, and that's where I'm getting some ideas from, and trying to take a bit of the color scheme from that, but you know, also stuff that up too. And I'm also trying to hide, so there's a bit of clipping that goes on in the ride through the roof, so I try to hide it by using the roof, and I thought I was really clever by putting in those roof tiles over the top of it. But then of course the carousel ends up spinning and you can just see it through the rest of the roof, which is really annoying. So I might have to try and figure out what to do with that because it kind of drives me nuts. And I think that's probably my first complaint about this game. It's the thing that I love about this game and I sort of dislike about it, is that you actually have to stick with a grid pretty rigidly. It's not very flexible with the sort of items you can use. You can use some circular ones, and some items allow you to work outside the grid, and I think there is a mod that lets you work outside the grid, but I'm struggling just a touch with that. But at the same time, it is what I like about the game, is that you do have this grid, but then I do try to make the paths a little bit more curvaceous, I guess, but it's not really possible because you have to sort of stick with the grid. So every now and again I might stick a diagonal path somewhere and try to hide up the part that I don't want to be seen using some of the bushes and trees, but it's very tricky. So that's something that I struggle with this game, but it is something that I kind of like about it. It's just one of those things. So something that I used to do when I used to play Roller Coaster Tycoon is I used to really enjoy changing the shop names so that they had a bit more of a unique name to them, and that also goes for the rides. So for instance, rather than keeping the rides Twister or Pizza Shop 5, you know, you used to sort of give it a different name so that it had a bit more of uniqueness to it. And rather than me doing that for every single name, if you just want to leave a comment below and say, hey, name that pizza shop Donald's Pizza or whatever, do that so I can then change the name for that. That way you guys get a bit more input into everything that I'm building, and we put a bit more of a unique spin to this series rather than just leaving shops as shop 1, shop 2, because they're a bit lame. And there's some really cool customization you can do with this, and the shops and the way that everything sort of interacts with each other is definitely more prominent in this game than any of the other Roller Coaster Tycoons. So hit me up in the comments and I'll implement them over the next couple of episodes. But that's about it for the time lapse. We're going to dive into a live play and I'll talk about everything that I've been up to. So I'll say that I've made a start on Mainstreet, but I'm definitely nowhere near finished. There's a lot more I want to achieve before properly opening the park, though I will open the park in just a second so we can see some people coming in. So a couple of things have changed. Like I said before, I knew I was going to stuff something up and I did, so I had to actually blueprint all this and paste it into a new save game. It was very complicated, but we're there. So anyway, it's a little bit different. We've got this gap here now because I've changed a little bit of the layout. What that means though is I've got these service roads that now can access all through here, which is really cool, and it also gives a bit of access to anywhere that they need to get to around here too. So I like these little gates that I've got going on here. I think that's quite cool. Now these shops are totally empty and I do need to now start filling them and getting some inventory into some of the park shops. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of some of these and just start filling in some of the shops. Now the ones on the corners, well actually at least this one I feel like should be a gift shop, so I'm going to place something like that. And that should line up with the door, which it doesn't. So, and this is what I mean by making everything perfect. I really would like everything to line up the way it should line up, and just to make sure that things are how they would be in reality. So that way the door's there, and I'm also going to make sure that people can get to the back entrance into that one too. Now I feel like this should be some sort of information kiosk. Yeah. And you can do some really cool customizing with this game too. So not just customizing, but you know, you're going to make sure that the place is clean. So you can make it so that any available worker will come and clean the place, and it can check on what people think about it and what sort of money it's making. It's very, very cool. One thing that I really wish the game had was the ability to have signs up the front, which I'm sure they're going to probably add at some stage, but for now I would really love some signs so that we can make a little bit more unique depending on which shop front it is. I feel like this one should be, again, something to do with, oh yeah, we'll make it ice cream. It's got a bit of an ice cream sort of a look. Yeah, and so that one's now waiting for some stock. So something that I do also need to do before I forget to do it is, here is where all of our cargo is going to be delivered. So I'm going to now connect it up like this. And eventually we're going to have a roller coaster that's going to sit above all this. Not completely above it, but it will be a little bit above. All that back road is now connected and away from anyone's sight, any of the guest sight, because they do hate that. And we'll be working on this at some point. Yeah, we'll get into that later on. I'm gonna keep on putting in some shops. So I've now just finished placing down those shops. We are turning this big one into a souvenir shop because it's probably going to be one of the biggest buildings within the park, kind of towards the entrance, as well as I think it deserves to be some sort of souvenir shop. Over here, I'm going to dedicate this to a burger shop, but you know, I'd love to have some sort of like burger sitting on top of here, so I might even look at ways of customizing and, you know, adding some props that would look pretty cool. And yeah, we've got the ice cream shop, and we also have an information desk too. So I also had to annoyingly place these doors so that people can access the back of them, so that they can stock them up, which is kind of annoying because now it's got this big open door, but oh well, that's totally fine. So now that we've done that, we're probably ready to open up for business. Now, when I open up, we are still probably, and when I say probably, I mean we are definitely going to lose money, because at the moment we only have a carousel in the theme park and no one is going to be impressed by that. And we also have no maintenance staff, and we also have no cleaners. There's just a whole lot we need to add in, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on that off camera. I'm going to get all that sort of happening, get some maintenance and some a bit of management side of things, and then in the next episode I'm going to show you all that, and we'll just dive into starting to build some rides, because without rides we're going to be losing quite a lot of cash, and we're just going to totally lose this scenario straight away. So I think we'll focus on that in the next episode. So I'm going to leave the park open, and we'll get some of the shopkeepers in, and I guess we'll get some guests in, because, you know, can't hurt just to have a few people roaming around. And I think we'll just leave it at that. Thank you guys for tuning in to today's episode. I'm really looking forward to working on this park and getting some more of this happening over the next couple of weeks. But until then, have a great week, and I'll see you in the next episode. See you later.